Okay, good morning, folks. This morning, due to a last minute cancellation, we are lucky to have a few folks who are going to introduce their bills. And Lori, I just did see Representative Holcomb, and she said she's not able to come. Okay. So we're starting that off with you, Representative. Thank you for being here.
Having me.
And we'll do a quick run around the room so you know to whom you're speaking, and then you can introduce yourself. And really, this is pretty informal, so just do your best elevator speech on why we should take up your bill. Okay.
Sounds great.
All righty. I'm Teresa Wood. I live in Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Buellscore, and Huntington.
Dan Donahue, Northfield, and Berlin.
Good morning. I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Woolgate, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Doug Bishop, and apparently as a freshman, they just give me half the town, Colchester.
It's not even half, is it?
I represent Green Farmington. Hi, I'm Zon Eastis, Guilford down south, it's where I live in Vernon.
I'm Esme Cole from Hartford. And I am Jubilee McGowan from Bridgeport, and I also represent Middlebury, New Haven, and Woodbridge.
And I'm Ray Garofano. I live in Essex, and I also represent Essex Junction.
Lori Morse, Building Committee Assistant.
Grand Poobah Wizards, otherwise, yeah. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
I'm Representative Joshua Dovovich. I'm here to ask you to take up H58. It's a bill that addresses a critical gap in Vermont Medicaid coverage by making play therapy a reimbursable modality. It's about fairness, access to care, and better outcomes for Vermonters, especially our kids and families who need it the most. Right now, therapists across the state are foregoing the use of or being penalized for using play therapy, a proven tool to help children and adults process trauma, build coping skills, and express emotions when words fail. Recent DVHA audit flagged providers for using play therapy as an intervention, claiming it's not covered under the Vermont Medicaid. The response, a vague manual saying play therapy can be a tool if it's tied to evidence-based approaches like CBT or family therapy, but only with meticulous documentation of how much of the session was devoted to play therapy and only billing for the amount of time play therapy was not used in the session. For example, if play therapy was used for 30 minutes of a 60-minute session, the therapist could only bill for the 30 minutes of non-play therapy. Therapists are left guessing what actually meets criteria. And ultimately, patients lose out when providers avoid this approach altogether for fear of significant consequences, such as monetary clawbacks. Here's why it matters. Play therapy works. For kids, it's a lifeline, helping them navigate anxiety, grief, trauma, and developmental challenges like ADHD and autism. For adults, it can unlock healing from trauma and it reduces stress. Studies show it builds emotional regulation, problem solving, and social skills, outcomes that save us money downstream by reducing crises and long-term care needs. Denying coverage isn't just a short sight, it's punishing providers for what's right for their patients. H58 fixes this. It adds play therapy to the healthcare administrative rules as a reimbursable service under Medicaid. Plain and simple, this is a 2-page bill with a big impact. More Vermonters get the care they need, and our therapists can practice without fear of audits clawing back their pay. The fiscal note is modest. Play therapy is already in use. We're just making it official and accessible. Before I close, 2 corrections to strengthen the bill. So in the bill, there were 2, after it was written, there were 2 things that were noticed that needed to be changed. So one, the line about an eligible play therapy credential needs tweaking. Clinicians can be trained in utilization of play therapy without being registered play therapy therapists. We should revise it to focus on qualified clinicians and their rostered supervisees, which leads to my second part. Point 2, we need to specify that clinicians must be enrolled with Medicaid to bill for this. It's a simple fix to ensure accountability and alignment with existing rules. This bill came from a real problem. therapists caught in a gray area, patients denied a tool that works. H58 is our chance to clarify coverage, support evidence-based care, and stand up for Vermonters who deserve better. I ask you to take up this bill and move it forward. Thank you. And any questions?
Thank you, Representative. Would you pronounce your last name for me? So
Dobrovich.
Dobrovich. Okay. So a couple of questions. Do you know whether commercial insurance, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, whether they cover play therapy?
They do.
They do.
So it is my understanding all other insurances cover play therapy as well as Medicaid in other states.
Yeah. And I was a little confused, and probably you were when you heard this, but I was a little confused when part of your introduction talked about that it's allowable only when linked with a billable session, but I don't even really understand why that sort of allowable thing is in there since they're not paying for it anyway.
So that is their verbiage. So
Yeah.
when I was working with Ledge Council to get this written, they reached out to Medicaid and it said it's covered. Because if you look in their book, it looks like it's covered. However, I pushed back because there's access to hundreds of people or hundreds of claims that were clawed back. So I was able to get some of the verbiage from one of those clawed back claims, and it basically said that it is not covered. So when that was presented to, when the Ledge Council presented that back to Medicaid, they came back, and I can email it to you guys, a long thing about how it's not covered, even though it looks like it's covered, but it's not covered. And if it's part of a session, it will be clawed back. So basically, if they audit you and they look at your notes,
Yeah.
and it says played for 10 minutes to generate a conversation to get into the
Right.
If you build for the full hour, the whole hour is null. So, but if I went in and I had that and I said I did it for 10 minutes, but then I billed for a 45-minute session, I said I was in there for an hour, but I billed for 45 minutes, I would be okay because that 10 minutes fell within that first window that I'm not billing for.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying. It seems peculiar that they would even, if they're not covering it, that they would even mention it in their definitions or their interpretations. In other, the reason I asked about commercial insurance, I'm just familiar with family members who have utilized that, and it's actually, it wasn't separated out as play therapy. It was considered all part of psychotherapy.
It's supposed to.
And I'm just wondering why that's not the case in Vermont.
And what's interesting is, like, if you, in my testimony, when I talked about that first part of changing the verbiage, because there's really, it's not like being like going through the work of becoming doing a modality like CBT, right? That there's a lot in learning that.
Can you say
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes, not everybody's familiar.
Sorry. And so when you're, that's different than play therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Play therapy is something that's used as a tool within multiple modalities. So the change there was because you don't go get licensed to do play therapy, but you should be versed in how it works. So there, that's why I made that change. But they do this, that, like you're saying, it should be used within a psychotherapy session, right? Not a separate thing. So yes, it is in session notes with Blue Cross Blue Shield and United and all those, and they don't look at it as anything other than the session.
I mean, for children, I would think that would be considered best practice. in fact.
How do you start?
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, let's talk about children.
To like a 2-year-old.
Yes.
Experience trying, yeah.
Go ahead, Todd.
What is play therapy?
So a simple example would be, right? So if I have a trauma or any need that I'm going to see a therapist for, I might not want to open up. It might be very hard for me to really have that conversation. So if you think about playing, whether it be having a dollhouse and playing house, or having a board game like Scrabble or Sorry or something like that, when you start playing these games, you get this, you become more relaxed, right? So then those conversations can actually start to happen because you're more relaxed and you can be like, oh, how was your day? What's happening here, right? So then you start to open up a little bit more. It's actually been shown to be very helpful with adults who have trauma because it's even harder for us as adults sometimes to get past we got to be tough and then say the things.
You just answered my next question. The age range.
It traditionally feels like it should be with children because it's play, but it is actually for adults as well.
I'm curious why, sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
I'm curious why, whose rule is it that it has to be separated out in the notes? Because for me, it's like part of, like I've heard of like children, even adolescents going to therapy. And the first thing they do is sit and like paint for a while to kind of like, break the ice. And so why does it have to be separated? As this part of the session was play therapy and this part was like,
Because it's not recognized by Medicaid as a modality that they will reimburse for.
is it only Medicaid that is
Yes,
requiring that
Yes,
separate?
post
Okay.
Medicaid.
Just Medicaid. So you can
This
do
is only about Medicaid.
exactly what you said, any other insurance, and they would not question it.
Yeah.
And in Medicaid, unless you're audited, they don't know. But now it went so far as, I don't know if it was Medicaid or a group that does it. They actually went through, there was a class about notes, like how to do your notes, be better at it, right?
Yeah.
So you don't get flagged when you're audited.
Right.
And they had a section that was like a 30 or 40-minute part that was talking about this particular subject of how to write your notes so you don't run afoul of Medicaid's rules, so you don't get clawed back, and how to do your time and all of that. So the fact that there's that says a lot.
Go ahead, Representative Bishop.
Two things. One, I'm curious, does Vermont have a rationale or justification for not doing what other states have done and recognize this?
I do not know. I didn't get into those questions. I was working through with Ledge Counsel through an auditor.
Yeah.
And through, or someone who's in the auditing department. I did not get that granular.
Okay.
And this the second question,
Yeah, go ahead.
you seem very knowledgeable and passionate about this subject. Is this something that was born out of your experience, or did constituents bring this to your attention? Just curious about the derivation of it.
So I have a relation to multiple therapists in the community. So I mean, from knowing therapists for personal stuff to knowing therapists in the community. That's really how I was aware of it. People I know who are really good therapists, some of them doctorate level, and we're going through this ordeal. And my question was, what's going on? So they tell me, and I'm like, this is incredible. So then, lo and behold, I get elected. And I said, what an opportunity to actually bring this forward and try and help the mental health community, like use a modality that is going to help everybody that it gets used with.
Go ahead, Representative.
So I think you alluded to it. I just want to make sure. Last biennium, our House Human Services Committee, we took a trip to, went on a field trip to Washington County Mental Health. They showed us, they have this, it's play therapy, but it's really for the parents. Maybe, they have some trauma, often didn't have the greatest role models and struggled. Sometimes the child would be autistic, just different things so that they
Sensory room. It was a whole
yeah,
sensory
well,
room.
this was separate from this. This was a play therapy room where they
Oh, yes,
would
yes,
play
yes,
with
yes,
their
that separate one.
child.
Yeah.
And then there was a therapist who was kind of off, who almost like would watch them, and they'd have a headset and would be guided while they were playing. Would this be? And I just remember I was chatting with one of the people giving us the tour on, it was like a pilot thing, but how successful it's been. Like stress has gone down in homes. Parents and children both were like reporting, better, their own mental health was better. So I'm just wondering if that kind of thing, do you know if that's already covered or if that would be covered under this?
So I'm going to say I'm not 100% sure. So
Okay.
in my time knowing people who work within that field, that type of therapy has been around for a few years, for a bit of time. And it's both, they watch to be able to help coach parents how to be, right? So they might even be in the air of parents.
Yeah,
right?
that's like.
So I think that is, I don't know the name of it, but I believe that's its own specific therapy. And just because they're playing, they're not playing to provide therapy. the therapy is provided on the interaction between the families. So I believe that is a different scenario from this.
Just curious. I fully support your.
No worries.
Go ahead. Dan had his first notice and then you.
Thank you so much for bringing this up. And I know that Massachusetts has seen some impact, some positive outcomes around art therapy for older Vermonters, especially individuals who are not, they wouldn't be older Vermonters in Massachusetts, but older Massachusetts.
Living in Massachusetts.
Around art therapy, and I think there's probably some strong parallels there, that they allowed the ability to bill Medicaid for art therapy, to help people who are, afflicted with Alzheimer's. So I see some parallels there, and thanks for bringing this to us.
Thanks for allowing me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is a great idea, but as an outsider, when I always thought people just like a therapist, just bill for the hour. So this is a new I didn't know they had to segregate out their sessions. This is all new to me.
And it's for this. So in a session note, right? You write what you did, what you talked about,
Yeah.
the modalities you used. And I'm not extremely versed in session notes because I don't, right? They're protected. But I know about what goes into them. So this is like you have to write it out a specific way and for this. But in general, yeah, session notes are very important. And if any of you see anybody, you can ask about for them, and that's an interesting view as well.
No, I like this. I just assumed they got paid for an hour. That's what they did for the hour. That's kind of sad
It's very.
that they work. Yeah.
Go ahead, Representative Donahue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not really a question, just to join it. I mean, I think it's one of the indicators of how much the way our system of healthcare works as a whole, that insurers all have different expectations, and therefore the providers have to carve their reports and their billing differently for each provider. It's just really strange going, I switched insurance. I had to switch because the insurer went out of business between MVP and Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm doing physical therapy, and MVP paid physical therapy 45 minutes, and here's your copay. Blue Cross Blue Shield, they have to break it out. We manipulated the leg for this many minutes, and we did this for this many minutes, and they're billed each separately and reimbursed separately and then tallied up. And it's bizarre. And it's like, why would you spend all that money to break down and analyze each component rather than, and it's the same thing here.
I never knew.
Ridiculous. Even if you did reimburse for it, why would you break things out and make it more complicated and more expensive?
And then less time with patients.
Yeah.
Right. To do all of this complicated.
Yeah.
Rep. Cole.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so very supportive and thank you so much. And if all those complexities weren't there in the United States, we wouldn't have to worry about this. Unfortunately, that's where we are. So that's an interim, and living in the household of a therapist, I cannot express to you the amount of pain and suffering. He did not enter the field to be a billing specialist. And so the amount of time and energy and money that has had to go into outsourcing to just get the codes right, so that he will be paid for his work. Like, he's done hours and hours on pay work because it's just really a nasty system.
Go ahead, Representative Bishop.
This may be more a question for the chair or others on the committee, but so would this be Vermont requesting a section 1115?
No.
Or what would Vermont need to do to make a
They can adjust their definition of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. It actually doesn't even really require a bill to do, as the ranking member and I were talking about. And I have already actually put in a email to Monica Ogilvie, Medicaid director at AHS, to say, who would we talk to about this? Because honestly, it shouldn't take a bill. It is evidence-based, got over 80 years of research behind it. And I'm not sure about adults, I'll be perfectly honest, but it is for children on Medicaid, EPSDT, which is early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. are required services. Psychotherapy is one of those required services. The fact that this is not part of the definition for children in psychotherapy is mind-boggling to me. And is, if they won't do it, then we will pass a bill. But if they can do it, it honestly is not going to increase the cost.
And that's the question I get to is, will increase cost. There is a cost to it. What it is not increasing it is just supplementing the same hour.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the same hour. Yeah. So, thank you for bringing it to us. We appreciate that. And thank you for, underlining the, issue, which we were not aware of. So,
Thank you for having me. If you do need to continue, if you want to take testimony from any witnesses, I can provide witnesses on the therapeutic side of it.
yeah.
If you have any interest, I have to reach out and see who's willing to. But that if, just to kind of get their perspective, because I mean, if you can imagine if if a session that pays out, let's call it $90, right? And you see a person every week for a month, for a year, and then all of a sudden you get audited in a year's worth of claims for one person, they ask you for all that money back.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's how this whole thing came to light.
Yeah, yeah. And so I appreciate that. And I guess I would ask you to check in with your therapist friends and ask them if they are interested in testifying. And we'll get somebody from Department of Vermont Health Access in here and figure out what might need to be done.
So I'll put my phone call out tonight, and I should hopefully have some information in the next couple of days.
Okay. And Lori's the person to send it to.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you
you
so
very much. You all have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
All right. So hopefully that's a problem that can be solved without
Yeah.
legislation. Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, then we'll do some.
We recently just left her committee, so she's on her way.
She's on her way. Okay, perfect, great.
I mean, she might next up.
Okay, so next we're gonna be taking
I
up
see her. She is.
H260. Oh, what wonderful timing, Representative
Yeah.
Priestley. Welcome to House Human Services.
Hello, people.
Happy to have you here this morning.
Oh,
And thank you for the quick response. We had a witness cancel at the very last minute, and we said we still have a few bills that we haven't had an introduction to, and yours was one. So welcome to House Human Services to discuss H260. And I don't think you've been here this year, so we're going to do a brief round of introductions, just so you know everybody. And Teresa Wood from Waterbury, also served Bolton, Buellsboro, and Huntington, and we'll go this way this time.
Ray Garofano, Essex and Essex Junction.
Julie McGill, Bridport, Middlebury, New Haven, and Weybridge.
it's Nicole Hartford.
Zon Eastus, Guilford, and Vernon.
Good morning, Todd Nielsen, represent Brandon Forestdale.
Kevin Bishop, Colchester's Chittenden 20 District.
Brenda Steady, East Milton, Westford.
Hi, good morning. Dan Noyes, represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
So happy to meet you, Andy.
Yeah. And our chief wizard.
The most important person in the room.
Yeah.
The assistant sub-felony wizard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Monique Priestley, Bradford Fairleigh, West Fairleigh. Can we put the picture up on? Cool, amazing.
We do have it on our.
Yeah, the photograph.
The photograph.
I got it. Cool. So I'm actually amazing. Thank you. I'm actually going to start by reading a message that I got from one of my constituents, a student, an 8th grader. And so Gracie McKinnon. So this was the message I got. Hey Monique, we are doing a project at school in science about red dye 40 and the effects it can have on our health. We are currently conducting an experiment with 3 pieces of celery in different colored water, red, blue, and without food coloring. After 24 hours, the celery in the blue and normal water is still upright, but the celery in the red water is droopy and dying. This started to make us wonder. If this is what it does to celery, what is red dye 40 doing to us? Then we decided we would try to get products containing red dye 40 banned. My teacher, Mrs. Vines, had the idea for us to write letters to important people in the state to help our cause. We were wondering if you would be interested in coming into school to see the experiments.
Ms. Vines also said it would be wonderful if you could talk to us about how these letters could make a difference. So of course I went in like the next morning. Yeah, it was, so you can see the celery here. The blue and the clear are just fine, but the red is horrifying and dying. So I went.
In just 24 hours.
Yes. Yes. So I went into the students, and they were just asking like, what can we do? Like, do we need to like email our representatives and send letters? I'm like, she's here. You did your job, good job. I was like, the next step is really like, I need to know, it'd be really helpful if other states or other places have done a similar thing. That's what you're asking. And they're like, oh, California already did it. So you can just copy California. And I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of how the process can work. So California had the Food Safety Act, so it bans 5 dyes, additives in food. It's a very short bill because it's really just a 1-page ban these things. Yeah, and basically the kids were like, you're killing us, please do better. And so committee, we're killing them, please do better. Yeah.
The previous witness came in with a 2-page already.
Yeah.
He was like giving his whole testimony. I mean, there is, right now, a federal ban that goes into effect in 2027.
Okay.
In less than 2 years. And so it doesn't seem, and in 2028 for red food dye is used in drugs. So I'm just wondering, I'm not sure it's going to benefit us to be out ahead of that. Unless, of course.
Yeah,
This is
hers is
2027
2027 as well.
Right,
Yeah.
but unless, of course, this gets the federal gets changed, which FDA, who knows if it's going to be around.
Exactly.
I think that, we probably won't take any action on it this year, but we should definitely keep it up there. And if, in the next few months, these policies that the FDA have put out somehow get reversed, then, there's no harm in us having that up there and working on it.
Well,
So,
and if you do want to hear more, I know it's a VPIRG priority. So they were actually running around trying to look for a sponsor. Esme and I connected on this, and I was like, well, the 8th graders beat you to it. So, so Esme and I are co-sponsors on this.
yes.
And to add to that too, so I have a separate bill which banned a slightly larger extent of dyes in school foods. And I spoke with, stakeholders in cafeterias about it, and they were totally supportive. And I think it is good to highlight, just besides Red 3, and Red 40, like there are some other things in here that actually I think would be realistic based on other states' legislation, not, being that we are a small state. So even though the movement is happening in 2027, perhaps if the federal government, decides that that's the case, I think we could move a little bit ahead of other things beyond the Red 40 as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that's so striking about this is we have known so long.
Yeah,
That these are really bad things. It's not like some of these other things that are sort of new knowledge about how bad it is. I mean,
Yeah,
And that they've been banned in other countries.
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's such a partisan issue. We have so much support.
It's how industry runs a country.
Exactly.
I know nothing about how industry lobby. Just learning. Yeah. I've never met any of their lobbyists in my life. Yes.
Yeah.
I wondered
That's very
if we could put the picture back up and take a picture of you with.
Oh, that's
Yes.
That's fine.
That's a good idea.
I assume they might even be watching. I gave them a heads up, but.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I can put up.
I just in case, right?
Yeah, everybody's.
Well, maybe they are watching.
That's true.
Thank you, Laurie.
You gotta look there, not
Oh, yeah.
there. if you're
Hi,
saying-
Oxbow hitters.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the brominated?
I do not, I cannot.
Okay.
But VPIRG can?
Yeah, okay, to the picture. To the picture. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't go into
Yeah.
the further detail.
Nice about that.
Ed's big on it.
Sounds more like a
Cool.
process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monique.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you need a respite from downstairs, feel free to come up.
Almost
anytime.
hang out. It's
All righty, thanks. Okay. All right, I think that's it, right, Lori?
I can peer supports.
Are you gonna do it? Okay,
Yeah, I'll tell
All
you
right.
a little bit about it.
okay.
Not prepared?
You don't mind if I get up and get my tea?
It's okay.
Is this, all you?
Strangers.
Hold on.
Documents.
Yeah, it's on our webpage in a moment.
It's going to be,
197.
the wizard is going to get
Wizard
it. for us.
takes
You can look it up anyway.
Yeah, we can
197.
easily find it, right, 197, okay, Bill.
Go for it.
Okay, so this is just a short form bill, reading peer support. Yeah, establishing peer support positions for housing stability. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. As you all know, I a long history of working in housing, tackling kind of housing and homelessness. And it's something we're starting to see talked about in a lot of those spaces. We've seen how successful peer support has been in areas like mental health and substance use disorder at helping people navigate those systems and having someone who gets it while you're really working to move your life into in a new direction. And we also know that we are facing a severe workforce crisis in this area. It is really tough work, and the level of acuity of need of people experiencing homelessness right now is just like nothing we've ever seen before. There's more need for clinical social workers, and so this is just a way that to alleviate some of that workforce dilemma that's going on, and can help people help the people who are doing this work work with folks. It's really can help the people experiencing homelessness to kind of have someone who they can chat with, who's been there, done that, who show that it is possible. A lot of people are struggling with hope right now. They've had doors slammed over in their faces over and over again, and it's really hard to maintain hope. So to have a peer who can show you that it is possible, and for people who have moved out of homelessness, it's a really meaningful path to like a really clear path to a meaningful career and employment. You'll find in this industry, a lot of folks do have lived experience of housing instability, if not homelessness itself. So I think this creates almost a pipeline for this workforce. So yeah, I did not even know I was on the schedule, and I sat and looked at the agenda after we already started. So I have some data and things at home, and but I can provide that later. This is something, it was the CAPS actually, where I was like, hey, actually, this is something I've been digging into for a couple of years now. And so they're on board. And I think, it's a separate bill, but I think it's something we could look at incorporating, while they're working on the implementation plan next year, is thinking about how we can make this a part of that system that we have.
Yeah, because we put it.
Yeah, we put that, yeah.
Yeah.
That support part, is listed in the bill, and this would give us an opportunity to really think about that and
Operationalize?
I can never get that word. Yeah.
I think
Yes, there we go.
I'm curious in what folks' thoughts are about, this is something, so peer support, I'm like, 100% behind, peer support and the effectiveness of, all over the place. It is, something, that is utilized, when, dealing with trauma, dealing with homelessness, dealing with mental health. I haven't gotten people to the developmental disability, intellectual disability side of it yet, but,
Cancer support group.
They do actually, it's happening, my local, getting, well,
they have a staff, some of them have a staff.
Yeah.
that they hire. In any event, one of the things that, I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but it's a bill we passed out here last year, the year before, really at the Secretary of State's office, developing this certification for peer support. And
I know, yeah.
I mean, I know about it, but I'm still I'm not sure about it.
So the struggle,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that was very specific to the mental health community.
Yeah.
And a big part of the issue really was about getting Medicaid funding. And the internal struggle in the mental health community was sort of by definition, peer is all about not being in a superior relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being on that same level. And there were some people who really felt if you certify and quote, institutionalize a position, you are creating a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're no longer authentic peers. And other people saying, but the only way we can get more peers out there is if we get Medicaid funding for the positions. So
Yeah.
we've got to do something. And there was somewhat of a compromise around peer groups being the ones who ran the elements for the training,
Mhm.
but the Office of Professional Responsibility doing the actual certification, which then makes it valid for Medicaid. But that was, very focused on just mental health. And then they kind of added substance use disorder peers into the bill to make both of those.
Mhm.
It doesn't cover, I don't know what the Medicaid issues are here and whether, and it doesn't mean you can't have paid peer supporters. There were a lot of places in the state that did peer support in mental health and substance use long before certification. It's just that they couldn't get Medicaid
Medicaid for
reimbursement.
it. Yeah.
So that,
Yeah, it was, I mean, I voted for the bill. It was, and we actually talked about it in here because of the substance use. It was not included originally, and then we worked on that. So it's kind of one of those, things where, a little bit, you kind of gotta give up a little bit of what you really feel is right in order to be able to do it more broadly. And that's kind of one of those situations. Yeah. So
And you find in this,
Yeah.
that mental health component and that substance use component, there are like housing counselor certifications, around that kind of thing as well. So, some of that, a lot of that comes into play. There's often, co-occurring kind of experiences. So yeah, it'd be interesting to explore.
all right, and we definitely will be next year for sure. So we have
thank you.
Yeah.
thank you very much. We have witnesses coming at 11. Three of us are going to be going downstairs to Senate Health and Welfare to do bill introduction on H91. They're picking it up right away. And so you'll have a little bit of time. You're welcome to come down, even though their room is even smaller than our room. You can watch it on TV.
It's okay if we turn it on here?
It's something I'll need to stop it there because.
I doubt that we are going to be a whole hour downstairs. I kind of doubt it. So, Lori, I think we can go offline.